Welcome to the deep dive. We've got a really interesting set of materials you sent over, all focused on decision making.
Yeah, it's fascinating stuff.
So today we want to really unpack those, hidden factors that shape pretty much every choice we make.
Right. Big or small.
Exactly. Like choosing a career or just what you're going to have for lunch. These hidden things are always working away. So our mission really is to bring them out into the open.
So you can become, hopefully, a bit more aware, maybe more effective in your own choices.
And your sources, they cover so much ground, don't they? How our minds work, social pressures, all of it.
Absolutely. And I think the main thing to get across right away is that making a decision, it's not just logic, not by a long shot.
Okay, so what is it then?
It's this mix, this blend of biology, what's happening in your brain, plus your psychology, and then, the whole social world around you.
And a lot of it is unconscious.
A surprising amount, yeah. Happens without us really noticing. We hope that digging into this gives listeners some of those aha moments about their own decision processes.
Yeah, me too. Okay, so let's map this out. Where are we going with this deep dive?
Good idea.
Think of it like a quick tour. We'll start with this Google process idea, fast versus slow thinking.
System 1 and System 2.
Right. Then we'll look at the biology, the brain stuff.
The nuts and bolts.
Then mental shortcuts and biases, those tricky things. The role of emotions, which is huge.
Can't ignore those.
And how society and culture kind of nudges. And finally, those deep unconscious drivers.
And the cool part is understanding this isn't just like academic.
No, it gives you practical tools, right, for making better choices. Okay, let's get into it. This dual process idea first.
Right, so this is pretty fundamental. Cognitive scientists talk about these two main ways our brain operates. System 1 and System 2.
Okay.
System 1 is the quick one. It's intuitive, automatic, doesn't take much effort. It runs on these mental shortcuts, heuristics.
Like your gut reaction.
Pretty much, yeah. And System 2, that's the slower, more analytical one. It requires conscious effort, attention. You use it for complex problems, important decisions.
So it's like that instant feeling versus really sitting down and thinking it through, weighing the options.
Exactly. And most of the time, these two aren't working separately. They're interacting constantly.
How so?
Well, you might get that initial gut feeling from System 1, right? And then System 2 might kick in to either sort of double check it or maybe override it if it seems off.
Okay, but here's where it gets interesting, like you said. System 1 is efficient, great for quick judgments.
Which we need all the time.
But it's also where a lot of biases come from. You mentioned Tversky and Kahneman. Their work showed just how powerful those gut reactions are, right?
Yep.
Often more than we think.
Hugely influential. They really opened up this field.
Can you give us a kind of everyday example, something our listeners might recognize, where these two systems interact?
Yeah, okay. Imagine you're scrolling social media. You see a headline that just perfectly matches what you already believe politically.
Happens all the time.
Right. System 1 kicks in, immediate agreement, feels right. Maybe you even hit share without really thinking.
Yeah, the quick reaction.
That's System 1. But then maybe System 2 pipes up. It makes you pause and think, hang on, is this actually a credible source? Is there another side to this story?
Ah, the critical thinking part.
Exactly. That's System 2 stepping in, potentially questioning or overriding that first easy acceptance from System 1.
Okay, that makes it really clear. Two modes of thinking. Now let's shift gears a bit. What's actually going on biologically inside our heads when we choose?
Yeah, okay. So down at the hardware level, it involves specific brain areas and chemicals, neurotransmitters.
Like what?
Well, the sources point heavily to the prefrontal cortex. That's kind of the brain's CEO. It handles the planning, weighing pros and cons, self-control, that sort of thing.
The rational part.
Largely, yeah. Then you've got the limbic system, things like the amygdala in there. That's more tied to emotions, instinctual responses, especially if there's a reward or a threat involved.
So prefrontal is the planner, limbic is the feeler.
That's a pretty good shorthand. And they're always talking to each other. Then you have the neurotransmitters, the chemical messengers. Dopamine is a big one.
Involved in reward, right.
Exactly. It helps predict rewards, motivates us to go after things we think will feel good. Then there's serotonin, norepinephrine. They're involved in things like assessing risk, regulating mood.
And mood affects decisions too. We'll get to that.
Definitely. And the key thing here is a lot of this brain activity, these chemical processes, they happen both consciously and unconsciously.
Meaning?
Meaning, often, by the time you think you've made a conscious choice, your brain's already been working on it, laying the groundwork, sometimes for seconds beforehand.
Wow. So the decision is kind of bubbling up before we're even aware.
In many cases, yes, it really makes you reconsider what making a decision even means.
Definitely makes you think. Okay, so we touched on biases with System 1. Let's dive deeper into that, this shortcut economy of the mind. Cognitive biases, heuristics. What are some key ones?
Right. So heuristics, again, are those mental shortcuts. Super useful most of the time, save mental energy. But they can lead to systematic errors, biases.
Predictable errors.
Yeah, predictable patterns of irrationality, you could say. Your sources probably flagged a few common ones. Confirmation bias is a classic.
Ah, yes. Explain that one.
It's our tendency to actively seek out, interpret, and remember information that confirms what we already believe. And we tend to ignore or dismiss stuff that contradicts it.
Oh, we all do that, don't we? Like you only read news sources you know you'll agree with.
Precisely. It feels good to be validated. Maybe for our listener, think about the last time you strongly agreed with something you read online. Did you actively look for an opposing view just to challenge yourself?
Probably not. If we're honest, it's uncomfortable.
It is. That's confirmation bias working. Then there's the anchoring effect.
Anchoring, like a boat.
Sort of. It's where the very first piece of information you get about something, the anchor, heavily influences all your later judgments about it, even if that first piece isn't very relevant or accurate.
Give me an example.
Okay, say you're buying a used car. The seller first throws out a really high price. Even if you know it's too high, that initial number can stick in your head and make subsequent, slightly lower prices seem more reasonable than they actually are.
Ah, so that first number sets the baseline, even if it's artificial. Makes sense.
It really does. And then there's the availability heuristic.
Availability, like what's easily available in my mind.
Exactly. We tend to overestimate the likelihood of things that are easy to recall, often because they're recent, vivid, dramatic, or heavily reported in the media.
Like plane crashes. Statistically rare, but very dramatic, so people overestimate the risk of flying.
Perfect example. Or maybe lottery winners. We hear about the big wins, makes winning seem more probable than it is. These biases just show our choices aren't always based on pure, balanced logic. Our cognitive wiring shapes them.
Okay, so fast, slow thinking, brain wiring, mental shortcuts. What about feelings? Emotions seem like they'd be huge drivers.
Oh, absolutely massive. Emotions don't just happen alongside decisions. They actively drive them. They give us information, but they can definitely skew our judgment too.
How do they give us information?
Well, think about Damasio's idea, the somatic marker hypothesis. Your sources likely mentioned it. It's the concept of gut feeling.
That pit in your stomach feeling.
Exactly. The idea is that our past emotional experiences kind of tag certain options or outcomes. A good past experience leaves a positive marker. A bad one leaves a negative marker. These are physical sensations, hence somatic.
So that gut feeling is like a quick summary of past emotional learning.
That's a great way to put it. It's your body quickly telling you approach or avoid based on past feelings associated with similar situations. Think back, listener, to a time you just knew something was right or wrong, even if you couldn't explain why. That might have been a somatic marker.
Interesting. Not necessarily irrational then, but based on past experience.
It could be very adaptive. But, like System 1, it's not foolproof. Needs checking.
And this source has mentioned mood congruence too. What's that?
Mood congruence is basically that your current mood influences your decisions. Simple as that.
Oh.
Well, if you're in a good mood, you tend to be more optimistic, maybe more willing to take risks, focus on potential upsides.
And if you're in a bad mood?
You might be more pessimistic, more cautious, focus on potential downsides or threats. Your mood literally colors how you see the options.
So making a big decision when you're really angry or upset? Probably not the best idea.
Generally, no. That emotional input from the limbic system can overwhelm the more rational prefrontal cortex. Understanding this interplay helps cultivate emotional awareness. You don't ignore emotions, but you recognize how they might be swaying you.
Right. Not suppressing, but acknowledging their influence. Okay, we've been very focused inside the individual head, but decisions don't happen in a bubble, do they? What about social factors, culture?
Crucial point. We're fundamentally social animals. Our choices are deeply embedded in our social context.
How does that play out?
Well, one major way is through social proof and conformity. We look to others to figure out how to act, what to believe, especially when things are uncertain.
Like, if everyone else is doing it, it must be okay.
Exactly. And that can lead to conformity going along with the group, even if you privately disagree. Have you ever done that, listener? Just gone with the flow to fit in or avoid conflict?
I think most people have at some point. It's powerful.
Very. And then there are broader cultural norms and values.
How do they shape decisions?
They provide the whole framework. What's considered a good career, successful life, what's morally right or wrong, a lot of that is shaped by the culture we grow up in. These values influence the options we even consider.
So what's normal in one place might be unthinkable somewhere else.
Absolutely. And even in smaller group settings, think about meetings or team projects. You have persuasive individuals swaying opinion or the risk of groupthink.
Groupthink?
Yeah, where the desire for harmony or consensus in the group overrides a realistic appraisal of alternatives. People don't speak up with doubts.
To keep the peace.
Right. Plus, we have social biases, like the false consensus effect. We tend to think more people agree with us than actually do.
Oh, interesting. We project our own views onto others.
We often do. So, yeah, when you add it all up, our decisions are kind of co-authored, written partly by us, partly by our communities and social pressures.
Co-authored. I like that. Okay, so it's not just us. It's us in the world. Now let's go even deeper. Unconscious influences. Stuff happening completely below the radar.
This is where it gets really fascinating, maybe even a bit spooky. A huge amount of the processing that leads to a decision happens unconsciously. It's built on layers of past experience, associations we're not aware of.
Like what kind of processes?
Well, sources mention things like subliminal cues. Stimuli presented so quickly or subtly that we don't consciously notice them, but they can still nudge our preferences or choices.
Seriously? Like hidden messages?
Not usually in a conspiracy way, but more like subtle environmental cues influencing mood or drawing attention. It points to this constant dance between our unconscious motivations and the environment.
And what about implicit bias? Those tests, like the IAT.
Exactly. Those tests suggest we can hold unconscious associations, positive or negative, about different groups or concepts. And these implicit attitudes, even if we consciously reject them, can still influence our snap judgments and behaviors.
Wow. And neuroscience backs this up.
Yes, studies show brain activity related to a decision often starts before the person is consciously aware of having made up their mind. The conscious mind might just be catching up and creating a rational story for a choice already made unconsciously.
So we might just be rationalizing after the fact.
Sometimes, yes, which makes it really important to be aware these hidden drivers exist so we can try to mitigate unwanted biases and make choices that genuinely align with our stated values.
Okay, this is a lot to take in. Our decisions are shaped by fast, slow thinking, biology, biases, emotions, society, and unconscious stuff. It could feel a bit like we're not even in control.
It can feel that way, but understanding is the first step toward regaining some control, or at least making more intentional choices.
So let's pivot to that. Given all these hidden forces, what can our listeners actually do to make better decisions? What are the practical strategies?
Right, the actionable takeaways. This is key. Your sources definitely highlighted some good ones. First and foremost, especially for big decisions, slow down.
Engage system 2.
Exactly. Resist the urge to go purely on gut instinct for important things. Take time to reflect, analyze, weigh the actual pros and cons. Consciously engage that deliberate thinking.
Just hitting a pause button. Seems simple, but probably hard to do sometimes.
It really is, but crucial. Second, actively seek out diverse perspectives.
Why is that so important?
Because it directly combats things like confirmation bias. Talk to people who think differently, who have different backgrounds or experiences. They'll see angles you miss, challenge your assumptions.
Get outside your own echo chamber.
Precisely. Then there's mindfulness and emotional regulation.
We touched on that. Being aware of your feelings?
Yeah, noticing your emotional state. Are you making this choice out of fear, excitement, anger? Recognizing the emotion doesn't mean ignoring it, but it means you can account for its potential influence. Are you being overly risky because you're feeling good or too cautious because you're down?
Okay, so awareness is key there. What else?
Using structured decision-making tools can help, especially for complex choices.
Like what? Spreadsheets?
Could be. Or things like decision trees, a simple cost-benefit analysis written down, thinking through best-case, worst-case scenarios. It forces a more logical process, gets you beyond just intuition.
Provide some scaffolding for system 2 thinking.
Good way to put it. And finally, feedback and learning. Look back at past decisions.
A postmortem.
Kind of. What was the outcome? What process did you use? Can you spot any biases that might have crept in? Learning from mistakes and successes is vital for improving. It's an ongoing practice.
These are great practical steps anyone can try. So, wrapping this all up then, the big picture is that decision-making is incredibly complex.
deeply complex. This interplay of biology, psychology, emotion, social context, unconscious factors, it's all happening constantly.
But by, as we said, unmasking these forces, by bringing them into the light through this kind of deep dive,
You gain a real opportunity. An opportunity to refine your own judgment, be more mindful, more intentional about your choices.
and hopefully make more effective decisions across the board, personal life, work, everything.
That's the goal. Increased awareness leads to better agency.
Okay, so here's a final thought for you, our listener, to chew on. Think about a decision you made recently. Could be big, could be small, doesn't matter.
Anything at all.
Now, reflecting on everything we've talked about today, System 1 versus System 2, biases like anchoring or confirmation, the mood you were in, who else was involved, maybe even those unconscious nudges, which of these hidden forces do you think might have played a part in how you chose?
Just considering that question, applying these ideas to your own life, that's a really powerful next step.
Absolutely. It's about continuing that process of self-awareness. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.